catch me on the run, cause I'm gone, yeah. I blaze trails, set fire to what's behind me. No, I'm never looking back, I'm on the run. I could only ever be what I'm made to be. It feels good when I'm living on the edge. Watch me now, go like thunder, gonna sacred ground. Can't stop me now, I don't give up and I won't back down. I'm a force of nature, can't be contained. I got a line there running all through my veins. Watch me now, watch me now.
Hi, my name is Wyatt Milam, and I'm from Canova, West Virginia. When I'm back home in Canova, you will find me at my local Parmar store.
We had that golden boot pride at Parmar. There are literally hundreds of Parmar stores in West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and even more on the way. Download the Parmar app to save even more. And whether it's food, gas, groceries, or whatever, we have you covered at Parmar. West Virginia proud and ready to serve you.
And if there's not a Parmar store near you now, there will be soon.
Oh, yes. Hello and welcome today to the WolfMan's Call. What a great day. It's Monday, June 12th. Looking right here at Penn State. 82 days. 82 days till the Mountaineers line up in Happy Valley and get ready. Are they feeling it? I think they're starting to feel it. I feel them. Are you ready? Are you stressing each and every repetition? Are you taking the most out of each repetition, each stretch? Are you paying attention in your summer workouts? Because you know why? I'm telling you why. 82 days until Happy Valley. And is there a sense of urgency? Hopefully I'm feeling a little bit of steam picking up. I'm really excited. And boy, I'll tell you, Happy Valley. If you want to know what it's like to snort snot, and you want to know what it's like to sit there and get very physical inside the line of scrimmage, offense, defense, it doesn't matter, special teams, flying down the field like a kamikaze, baby. This has got to get your blood fired up. And guess what? 82 days today. Tomorrow, guess what? It's going to be 81 days, and I don't care. I'm going to keep playing it because there's got to be a sense of urgency. And watch this team get it going. Get going. It's our Mountaineers. We want to see them succeed, but we got to be ready to go. It's a young team. Got to be prepared. Got to be mentally fit and ready to roll. Boy, I'll tell you what, I am on fire today, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something just a little bit different here, and I'm going to open up with this, and that is with here, subscribe on YouTube, West Virginia football, the voice of college football. Why? Because WolfMan's Call rocks football. And you know what? If you're watching on Facebook and you like the show, share it. Go ahead, share it all. I like to share it all on my groups, and I try to get it out there. And if you're watching on Twitter, retweet it, man. Give it a retweet because it's kind of cool. That's right. Let's get this show cooking because we got a lot of great guests, and that includes today. If you're not fired up, baby, you know why, because it's the Frank Fear Hour, and that means that our guest, Frank Fear. Mr. Fear, how are you doing today, this Monday?
I am doing great, Wolfman. Good to see you. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, you too. Now, what do you think about that with 82 days to go, Penn State? Because not only in Michigan State, you're also in West Virginia. So, I mean, you're kind of a tweener there, but you are the author of the Band of Brothers, Then and Now, 66 to 70 Mountaineers. I think I've said that probably in the last 3 months. I must have said it over like close to 1,000 times. I mean, honestly, I shouldn't. I have it down, the 66 to 70 Mountaineers, because the book is so cool, and I have it always with me. The stories, It's got your picture on there, Frank, but I said it to you earlier. My mother likes you, so that means you're in good shape. What are we doing today, sir?
Well, yeah, I want to tell you, I'm getting fired up for the Penn State game. Like you, I grew up in Western New York, and Penn State was not a friend on the football field. That was for sure, and that hasn't changed all over the years at all. Today, we're going to talk about conferences. I have a whole chapter in the book, chapter 5, specifically about the evolution of West Virginia football and how conferences have come in and out of the picture. This is something that I didn't know when I wrote the book. When I reread the chapter, I said to myself, how many years in the 20th century was West Virginia in a conference? And how many years were they an independent? Well, you didn't play in a conference when you were at West Virginia. It started right after you left. But 70 years to 30 years in favor of being an independent. In other words, during the 20th century, West Virginia was an independent for 70 years and was in a conference for 30 years. Believe it or not, West Virginia started back in the 20s when it was part of the West Virginia Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Doesn't exist anymore. But obviously playing, lower level schools, state colleges back then, but it only lasted 2 years. Then West Virginia joined the Southern Conference in 1950 and was there through 1968. So what it really boiled down to is the guys that I interviewed for the book, a couple of years for most of them as independent, and then a couple of years in the Southern Conference. And then after you finished your time at WVU, West Virginia joined the Big East and was there for a decade. But now there's no choice. You have, unless you're Notre Dame, you really have to be in a conference because of the money, the media money that comes from conferences. Again, except if you're Notre Dame. And you and I have talked about this. We go back and forth. I think you and I are both what I would call tradition guys. It hurts that WVU does not play Pitt, Penn State, Syracuse, 3 schools every year like the way they used to. But today it's a matter of market forces. We know that. And I like to read comments to your show and others, on Facebook and so on. And, I try to argue tradition. And the market forces guys say, look, old man, get with it. It's the market that reigns supreme. And, I can't argue against that. You think about it. Think who are conference commissioners these days. It used to be, say, the Big 12 as an example. Bowlesby was the commissioner of the Big 12 for a long time. Came up a very traditional route. He was a university AD, then became a conference commissioner. That's not the path these days. If you think about it, you got guys like Yormack, who's running the succeeded Bowlesby, running the Big 12 now. And he came from the Brooklyn Nets and Jay-Z, so sports entertainment. Kalifikoff, who is the commissioner of the Pacific 12, came from MGM and also Major League Baseball. So you got to be markets. Now, this is the point I want to make, and I haven't seen this anywhere else. I don't want to go and say it's an exclusive for the Wolfman Call show, but I think something's going on. If you look at history and you look at what's happening today, I think, using a film reference, I think college football is going back to the future. Now, why do I say that? Back to the future. Way back when college football started, and we're talking about the very last part of the 19th century, 1890, 91, 92, West Virginia started the football team back then. The major conferences were few and far in between, but eventually they followed the same path, and that path was set by the Big Ten. Wasn't called the Big Ten back then, Wolfman. Wasn't called the Big Ten, not until about 1910 or so, and it wasn't even 10 schools until Ohio State joined to make it 10, and it stayed that way until University of Chicago was in the Big Ten, and it dropped out because the president thought that college football was getting too commercialized, too much money, too much betting in the game. Sound familiar?
Yeah, it's getting there. Yeah.
Oh man, I've read his stuff from the 1920s and 30s, and I swear if you just don't look at the date it was published, it sounds like today. But the Big Ten has been the most persistent and the most consistent in terms of having members that fit a profile. And here's the profile. The Big Ten has schools that are of one of three types. They're state flagship universities. What's a state flagship university? University of Illinois. Or they're a state land-grant university, ag and tech and engineering in particular, like a Kansas State. Or they're an elite private school, like a Vanderbilt or a Duke or a Stanford. And if you look at the Big Ten over the years, they have not wavered from that model. The other thing about the Big Ten is Chicago is the only school that left the Big Ten. And they left because the president got sick and tired of football, used a losing season, had a lot of power. He ordered the stadium, 60,000 seat stadium, to be torn down. This is back in the late 30s. And then Michigan State joined. Now, I've got a question for you. Okay. I didn't know the answer until I Googled it. What schools were rivals of Michigan State to replace Chicago? Do you have any clue? I didn't. I didn't have a clue. And one of the answers.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
How about Purdue?
Well, Purdue was already in.
Oh, never mind.
Purdue was one of the original 8 or 9. Pitt.
No way.
Pitt and Nebraska were rivals of Michigan State to get in the league picked.
I was going to say Nebraska next, but not Pitt. I had no idea.
Can you believe that? Pitt was there. Any rate, so they're the only schools that have kept that, and up to this day, all their additions, Penn State. Penn State's like Michigan State. It's a state land-grant university and a state flagship university. Nebraska, also state flagship, land-grant. Maryland, exactly the same. You go on and on. You've got USC, which is an elite private university. You have UCLA, which is a major state university. You could say it's a flagship because there are really two University of California's, Berkeley and UCLA. So they've done that. Now, here's the issue. The other conferences did not. They had a mix of schools. In other words, they had a mix of schools who weren't state land-grant schools, who weren't elite privates, or weren't land-grant universities, state flagship universities, and private schools. I want to read you a list. And again, it blows my mind until I looked at this in history. Perhaps some would argue this. The major rival of the Big Ten back in the 20s and 30s was, believe it or not, the Southern Conference.
Okay.
The Southern Conference. And the reason for that is, let me read you a list of schools from 1925 that were in the Southern Conference. Alabama, North Carolina State, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi State, LSU, Clemson, Maryland, not finished, Tulane, Washington and Lee, Sewanee, which is the University of the South, and VMI. All those schools were in the Southern Conference.
Wow.
Now, if you think about that list that I just gave you, those schools that were in the Southern Conference back then left the Southern Conference for the most part. The Alabamas of the world obviously went to the Southeastern Conference. which started in 1932, and the North Carolina states and Marylands of the world went to the Atlantic Coast Conference
Right.
in 1953, I think. West Virginia joined the Southern Conference in 1950. But back at the beginning, it was a mix of schools. Same thing for what we now know as the Big 12. Wasn't a direct line, but the beginning was called the Missouri Valley Conference. And the schools that were in the Missouri Valley Conference included schools, this is amazing to me, Grinnell, Drake, Washington of St. Louis, along with Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Missouri, Nebraska, and goes on. And then they broke out starting in 1928. The Missouri Valley Conference still is there, no question. But the Big 8 and then the Big 12 evolved out of that experience. But again, what's interesting about it, they followed both the Southeastern Conference, the ACC, and the Big 8-12 followed the same pattern of the Big 10. We don't want a mix of schools. We want state flagships. We want state land-grant universities, or we want private, golden schools like the Stanfords, Northwestern in the Big 10. You've got Vanderbilt in the SEC. You've got Duke in the ACC. And the same thing applied out west. The thing that blew my mind when I looked at history is what we now know is the Pacific 12 was once the Pacific 10. I knew that, and started as the Pacific 8. But before that, other schools were in that league called the Pacific Coast Conference. And that included schools like Idaho and Montana. So I looked at film of Idaho playing UCLA in the Rose Bowl back in the 50s. And I'm saying to myself, okay, this was the beginning of the season. No, they were a conference member. And so Idaho leaves, and so does Montana. So these conferences all began to model the Big 10. Now, let's go forward to today. And the thing that I find, it's almost miraculous. I'd say about 5 or 6 years ago, I would have bet the Big 12 was toast. I have a list here of all the schools that left the Big 8 and the Big 12 for other conferences. In other words, other conferences poached them. Nebraska left for the Big 10. Colorado left for the Pacific 12. It became the Pacific 12. And Texas A&M, which came to the Big 12 after the Southwestern Conference went away in the mid-90s. University of Missouri, founding member of the Big Six back in those days, they left. And Oklahoma and Texas are leaving.
Right.
6 schools left the Big 12. I figured it was done. So what did they do? The Big 8 actually went out of business and then reconstituted as the Big 12. Well, they didn't have 12 teams. They were down to 8. And so West Virginia and TCU came into the league. Now, that follows the Big 10 pattern. WVU is a land-grant university and a state flagship.
Okay.
TCU's a private, tough to get into, high tuition. It's not exactly at the same level as a Duke or Stanford, but it's a damn good private school. Same pattern. Now, what's happening now? The Big 12 has expanded. Okay, you look at the schools that they're expanding and starting with, they begin to compete. The Big 12 has broken the mold. None of the schools that are coming in, Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, Central Florida, fits any of those categories that I talked about. Not one of them is a state flagship university. Not one is a state land-grant university, and not one is a gilded private school.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? That means that I think we are going back to the future. And it makes sense if you believe in the power of market forces. All these schools that are coming in have done really well in football at various times, but they're in the group of 5. There's been nowhere for these schools to go. They can't get into, they knock, but they can't get into the Power 5 until the conference that everybody was writing off, in other words, the Big 12, invited them. And now, I just saw it today, I'm going to get this guy's name, Tim Fitzgerald, who writes for a blog called Go Power Cat that's related to Kansas State, is reporting just today, that the Big 12 basically has a deadline, June 30th, for 4 schools for membership. Whether it's true, I don't know. Colorado, Arizona, those 2 schools fit that traditional mold. Colorado is a state flagship. And Arizona, like West Virginia, is a combo school. It's both the flagship and a land-grant university. And they've also extended invitations to San Diego State, which again is a group of 5 school. Doesn't fit the mold, but boy, have they been successful in football and basketball recently. And UConn, which won a national championship in basketball, but is looking to make a name for itself. My God, the New England needs college football, and basically all they have now in terms of major school is Boston College. UMass is not a player, so UConn. Again, I don't know if this is true on the 30th, but here's a conference, and I'll end with this, that many wrote off for dead. In fact, the conferences did. You may recall a couple years ago, Wolfman, the SEC had the other conferences so upset and concerned, they formed this thing called the Alliance, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. They didn't invite the Big 12 because they thought, I believe, the Big 12 was going to become a group of 5, group of 6 player. Forget it. It's not relevant. Well, the Big 12 is laughing now. ACC's in the news because some schools are saying we're leaving if we don't get our fair share of the media money. You've got the Pac-12 that's hanging on with its fingernails, already lost its 2 headline schools in Los Angeles to the Big Ten. The Big Ten poached it. And the Big Ten's also looking at Oregon and Washington. It's crazy. So it's amazing to me. And the reason I say back to the future is way back when football started, the major conferences had the mix of schools. Then they got sort of pure, okay? Only certain types of schools. Well, the Big 12 is already shown by its 4 new invitees that it's not going to hold that mold sacred. And as a consequence, we've got Cincinnati, we've got Houston, BYU, and Central Florida coming into the league, and maybe more.
Well, it would be something because, on the show today we have You Make the Call, and I got Pat Narduzzi from Pitt, head coach, and Deion Sanders kind of battling it out today. So Deion, prime time, him coming into the Big 12, wherever he goes, he's a mover and shaker. And whether you like him or not, we're going to be making the call later on. He's going to do it. And I see Arizona. I see that. I got recruited by Arizona, so I actually took a recruiting trip out there because I never saw the desert from Buffalo, New York. I never knew what the desert looked like. So one of my 5 trips I actually took out there. And San Diego State and UConn are a surprise to me, but they're not. New England, that's a market. I see the market. San Diego State, that's a market too. But you're leaving out Arizona State, which is one of the largest institutions in the country for numbers wise. It rivals the big ones, and so as some other ones, and bring it in. I'm telling you, it's a different world, man. But so much for I want the local rivalry so we can travel because no one's getting them. No one is getting them. The SEC, you got to travel all over the place. Go ahead, travel down to Florida. ACC. I think they got $25 million a piece last year. I think the Mountaineers got 45 million. So it's just absolutely insanity, because what's really going to happen, Frank, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but you are the historian, is that these are all going to go into 4-16 teams.
Well, I think
that's what it's going to be.
I think you're absolutely correct. And I think this is another thing I would add. Back in the day of, Woody Hayes against Bo Schembechler and all this stuff that we had, college basketball was, it was exciting, but it wasn't big in terms of market forces. It really didn't become big until the Magic versus Bird back in the late 70s. That's when it really became a media thing. And now that darn March Madness is generating about $1 billion in revenue for the NCAA. So I'm going to make a prediction. I think the next step for the Big 12 and Yormark, and remember, he comes out of an entertainment pro sports background. There are two schools out there that are mighty in basketball. One's Gonzaga on the West Coast, and then UConn on the East Coast. It wouldn't be a stretch if we find out sooner than later that Gonzaga is coming into the the Big 12, along with UConn. Obviously, UConn's going to be a project in football. Gonzaga doesn't have a Division I football team. It could play certainly Big 12 basketball and then continue in the West Coast Conference. The conference it's already in to play, St. Mary's and Santa Clara and so on. And so I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And the reason I say that is not because basketball is just a great sport. It's a big moneymaker for the major players. And to grab Gonzaga, who's a regular in March Madness, UConn. And so I think there is, again, things change fast. But for all the WVU fans and the Big 12 fans, nobody's crying anymore, like you pointed out. This may be, along with the Big 10 and the SEC, the lead conferences. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised what you predicted is going to be true. We're going to have super conferences that are going to be coast to coast.
And just remember this. This is just a little bit off the subject, just bringing it back to WVU a little bit. And that is that WVU has been making $40+ million for the last 6 years, let's say, because they had to pay the penalties and only get so much of an interest. But they were making $8 million before that per year. Yeah. And what they've done with the facilities, this timing of getting ahead of Cincinnati, of getting ahead of all the other schools has been huge for WVU to stay in it with the minimal amount of resources that a school like WVU has. I mean, you taught for how many years at Michigan State? You know the resources they have. It's not the same. It is not the same. It's unequal, and the Mountaineers do pretty good for what they have. But again, this last bit of being in the Big 12 has helped them immensely and maybe kept them in there, because who knows? If we would have been G5. You don't know if they would have gotten in with Cincinnati. Don't know it. Don't know it. I don't. And I like to rub my football helmet for searing and blessings, but it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. We don't know. So very good, Frank. Well, listen, man, I appreciate it. And it's been the Frank Fear Hour. You know, I tell you, it's good, man. I had no idea. You just gave us a whole history of college football alignment. A history of it. That's what he just did. I mean, right here on the Wolfman's Call, man, I remind you, because I'm never going to not pump up the Wolfman's Call for a self-plug. Yeah. But you just gave up the whole, I mean, that's huge. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. You have a great day. And, you know, I want anybody, if you ever got a question for Frank Fear, if you ever want to talk to him, you got to go to the sports column, .com. It's the sportscol.com. And he's the author of The Band of Brothers, Then and Now, 66 through 70 Mountaineers. You can't miss it. It's all in the sports column. All right there. I put up the QR. It's been up. You see it. You know Frank Fear. He's the man. And next week, you got anything planned for next week already? Or
I keep on evolving. I've got to go back. What I do is I go back to the book. I go back to the book, and say, okay, now what can I talk about next week? So we'll see what's going to happen. But as always, Wolfman, you're the greatest, and we appreciate the opportunity. And as you say, I've really become an amateur college historian when it comes to football and basketball, and I really love it. And so I hope what I had to say today was informative, educational, and fun.
You know what? And entertaining.
That's
All
right.
It's the Frank Fear Hour. All right, Frank, have a great day. We'll see you, buddy.
You too. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Frank Fear, man, if you don't love that guy, I don't know. You got an issue here. But I'll tell you this. Now, moving on, we're going to have Trvis Knobbe coming on, and I see that he's backstage right now. Good timing, Travis. We got this right here to go to first, and then we will be right with you. But first, I got to get this caption of Frank off there. All right, there we go. And then Pod, I see it, buddy. Robert Podbesic. Hey, he said, I know, Frank, you can hear me. Thanks, Frank. That's what Robert Podbesic said. A great dude. I think he's part of the 66 to 70 Mountaineers, so I'm sure you already know there. And let's continue to go here. And what do we got? Well, we got something that's really become near and dear to me, and that is game changers. And if you look at it, and you see game changer right here, it's, one pill can kill. It's GameChangerUSA.org. It is the biggest problems. This is the prevention of opioids and substance abuse in West Virginia for our youth. One pill can kill. Last couple of weeks, we followed the show. We went down there to the Greenbrier Resort. They're doing all kinds. Meg Bulger is doing fantastic work. She is involved. They're changing our youth, man. We're making a difference. So you know what? I'm going to keep plugging this every day. I don't care. I hope you are in favor of it because that's amazing. And what they're doing, governor to senators, all that, man. That's what they're about. GameChangerUSA.org. Go to it, see what you can do to help. I'm involved, and I'll do what I can. And Joe Bozick, Executive Director, Old Boz, known him since back. He was a sports information director for WVU way back in the early 80s when my brother Ron was going there. So it all goes back. With that being said, though, so now I have something special. And this guy here, I call it my Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, because he writes really good on the last word of sports. And it's Trvis Knobbe, and he's a contributor for this. And Travis, how are we doing, sir?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing great, brother. I'll actually get you equal time with me right here. So, oh, you got your visor. You're down in Atlanta. Is that a hat or a visor?
Oh, it's a hat.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a visor. I thought, you were doing that southern thing out there, playing golf as the lawyer that you are. Who knows? What's going on, man?
Not much, man. I listened to your game changer plug. I love it. I'm going to second that. Anything that can help the youth of West Virginia and in the country and as a whole is a good thing.
Well, you know what? And just to continue this just a little bit before we get into what we're with you today is that it is a first. I mean, West Virginia is one of the states that is having the most problems with opioids. There's no doubt about it. There's an epidemic, but they're also the state that's leading the nation in fighting this. And they have so much more coming on. So, yeah, man, I appreciate that. And I know you care about West Virginia and all that, even though now you're Atlanta, but that's all right. Everybody's got to go where they got to go. And you can always be in Mountaineer Nation.
Absolutely. You see the West Virginia emblazoned in coral on my wall back behind me.
Yeah, I do, brother. And here's the cool thing. I'm going to go ahead and put this up. But let's get into what you want to talk about with this. And I'm thinking about, right here with your two articles. And I'm going to just put them up here. And if you can't see it, sorry, but go ahead, Travis. You had one come out June 6th, the other one come out June 8th. And it's really about the testing of the Mountaineers. You wrote an article probably a month ago, saying Morgantown, we got problems. I had you on then. And this is not, and I want to make this clear because I want to set this up for you because I've been, people have wondered where I'm coming from when I'm stating out there are issues that's going on. There's a pattern that has been going on. There's a track, and we want the Mountaineers to succeed, and we want them to do their best. So we're looking at it and trying to find solutions, as I know that your articles here are identifying the problems. If you don't identify the problem, you don't know you got a problem. And then you go ahead and you try to find solutions. Take it away. Tell me if I'm right or if I'm on the wrong track.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, some of the feedback I've gotten, especially on the Answering Morgantown's Problem article, has been, well, it's the coaching staff and they want to take the easy way out. And maybe that is a problem, but it's not the first place we're going to start, because as you like to say, Wolfman, it's all about the Jimmies and Joes, right?
All right, you got me there. You got me.
And that's what the Answering Morgantown's Problem, sort of part one of a series, is about. Is, you know, 247 Sports has started to do this thing where they do this talent composite rating, is what they call it. And it takes all of the players that are on a football roster at the beginning of a season. And with the transfer portal, that's harder and harder to do. So they release those numbers like right before the season now. And they assign a score basically based on all of the different players' ratings. And, you know, for people who think, do stars really matter? What do they mean? Well, you know, in fact, if you look at the schedule of all of the Power 5 teams and you look at the talent composite rating for each team, that rating has accurately predicted well over 70% of every Power 5 game played over the last 6 or 7 years since they first started generating that indicator. So basically what I did was looked at it and said, what were we supposed to do based on the talent that the team had? And in 2019, we were supposed to go 5-7. And what was our record that year? It was 5-7.
Right.
In 2020, we were supposed to go 5-5. We went 6-4. In 2021, the Mountaineers overperformed the most under Neil Brown. That indicator predicted we would go 3-10, and we went 6-7. And then in 2022, it predicted we were going to go 6-6, and we went 5-7. Okay. So it's kind of objectively looking at the players that make up teams and saying, should they win or should they lose? And in reality, you could say Coach Brown is the problem all you want, but it's actually the composition of our rosters that is the problem. And yeah, that is something that falls on the coaching staff's shoulders, but there are probably other things going on behind the scenes that we need to look at. And that's number one to me is the attrition that we've had through the transfer portal over the last two or three cycles.
Okay. All right. So now you're saying attrition over the last 2 or 3 cycles, and you're saying that there's other things going on, but what's the attrition? What's the reason?
Well, you and I have talked about this kind of behind the scenes a few times, and I won't get into, some specific situations that we both know about. There are some players that leave for opportunities that they think are objectively better.
Sure.
But there are a lot of players all across the country that are leaving for greener pastures. And by greener pastures, I mean more money. And we need to do a better job of identifying where those risks lie and figuring out whether we want to, with each individual player, head off that risk or let them go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are you coming up with now? What's your thought process of what we've lost, what we've gathered?
So, I mean, if you look at, let's take like the last 3 years, right? And what we've lost. And, each year we don't lose we don't lose a half dozen or more players that are really good, but we are each year losing 2 or 3. I mean, when Messidor left, that was a big loss to the team.
Right.
Charles Woods leaving this past offseason is a big loss to the team. Charles Woods had the potential to be the best returning Big 12 cornerback in the league.
Well, Jordan Jefferson was a big loss.
Jordan Jefferson, absolutely. 247 assigned him a 91 grade, 4 stars solid, and he transfers to LSU. So, you add those players up, and I did, and you add the players that we had lost the prior 2 cycles going into last year. Mm-hmm. If you add those back into the talent composite, like the talent composite we were talking about earlier, last year we should have gone 8-4 or 9-3 if you add back in the good players we lost in those prior 2 cycles. So the attrition is actually mattering in terms of wins and losses.
Okay. All right. So when we're looking at this, we lost 22. Wait a minute. We lost 22, gained 14. What is it telling you now?
I think that we, in a couple of positions, it looks like we may have received sort of body for body trades.
Okay.
Depends on how good at the wide receiver position. It depends on how good Devin Carter ends up playing a full season. He's played, a lot of snaps for NC State, but hasn't sort of strung together a full season.
Right.
And it depends on how good Caden Prather ends up being. But that may be a body for body trade, except Devin Carter only has 1 year and Caden Prather has 3. Another place, surprisingly, 247 Sports gives Montre Miller, the Kent State cornerback transfer, they give him a pretty high grade, a 91. They think he's 4-star capable. And Charles Woods, they only gave an 89 grade. So we may have received a slight upgrade, except you never know how these G5 FCS transfers are going to perform once they meet the big-time talent, like you've talked about in the past. It's one thing, Kent State playing MAC-level talent. It's another thing to go in, and play Penn State at night with a whiteout.
Well, and I think too, Trvis, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if I think too, when you talk about that, you have to think of the attrition of a season. Like, I think it's easier to go in and play tough physical football on a big name opponent if that's your once or twice, if you're for the MAC. Say you got once or twice shot. I think it's easier to get up for that game. The problem is that everybody in the Big 12, everybody in the Big 10, they all got their players. And I think trying to bring these younger guys up is fine, but you have to develop them emotionally, physically, and obviously you have to do the logistics of what your system is. So now when you're changing all this and bringing them in to play better talent, it just seems to me that even though Charles Woods left at, I'm sorry, did you say 89?
Yeah.
Is that okay? He left at 89, but Montre Miller came in at 90. Well, Montre Miller is not faced with Charles Woods at. I mean, Charles Woods been through a year and a half because he was injured. A year and a half or over a year anyways, because he got injured right away at Pitt. But over a year of facing big-time talent. Where Montre Miller, how many games has he had to grade him up? So that's my thing is, yes, that's a nice even trade, but I think it goes a little bit deeper. What do you say?
I mean, I agree with you. It's not, when I've talked about star ratings, I've said, look, they are not the end-all, be-all.
Sure, no, you've always said that, yeah.
West Virginia has had many years where we've outperformed our quote-unquote recruiting rankings. But TCU last year is a good example of a team that had no business being in a national title game based on their talent composite, but they got there. It happens sometimes.
Sure.
So, you call it even in terms of talent composite, but you're right. They have to get up to speed. They have to get up for every game at a level that they're just not used to. So I agree with you 100%. On the grades, it may be an even trade. Mm-hmm. In reality, it may not be. I mean, Montre Miller may play half a season well and half a season timid.
You know, brother, and I think you're right on with which I love what you did. I mean, what you touched on is I can't do that in my head. Okay, I'm a guy that looks at this, Jimmy's and Joe's, right? But and they have these grade point average, but you look at it and divide it up in a system that break it down. It's really fascinating to me. But what I wanted to see then is that if we have and this we can be successful, but we got to do it the right way. And if we have 14 guys that have signed, 5 of them are Power 5, and the rest are FCS or real G5, one FCS. Okay, I think that's trying to go for the diamond in the rough too many times. I think that there could be a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem if you develop them the right way. Logistically, I don't think you have. You want to bring these guys in and have them develop a year, at least in your system. Anytime you bring in a transfer, they're going to be better the second year in that system than the first.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's the big problem that the transfer portal creates, especially for a school like ours that is relying heavily on those mid or upper 3-star guys who, they may not show out their first or even second year, but you get them developed into your system, and it's the Don Nehlen way, right? You know it well. Every
Absolutely.
third or fourth year, we've got seniors and juniors all over the team that are just crushing people because they've been there, done that.
Have you looked at how many seniors and juniors we have experience now and in the system? I think that's something, I think, because they have to be the leaders, right? It stems from head coach Neil Brown to the coaches, but it goes right to the leaders, Zach Frazier being one of them. I'll point him out. I think he's a great leader, great dude. He's not going to be a big talker, you know what I mean? But he's going to lead by crushing people and putting them on their backs. That's how Zach Frazier leads. And I think there's other guys that are there, like a Lee Koba came in. I think he's very unusual that he could be a boisterous guy just being a transfer. It doesn't happen all the time. And in fact, it doesn't even happen 50% of the time. You have to really work and develop these guys. And I just think that's my concern. It's my concern. I say get up, overcome it all. I don't care. You're a mountaineer. We play smash mouth football. That's who we are. Do we have that culture with 14 new guys and 22 lost? It's just, and I'm not saying just the Mountaineers. This is college football. And I look here for Joey saying a question for you. If the NCAA would get rid of the pay-for-play rule and we could tie a player to a university through NIL, would that not solve a big problem, including the portal? Do you understand that? What he said there? Can you read it?
Yeah, I mean, he's basically, I think, asking if a school were allowed to. I mean, right now you can do NIL, but the school can't be the one involved doing it. The school can't say, or even boosters or donors or third parties can't say, we are only paying you if you sign and play for and continue to play for a specific school. Now, in reality, though, if somebody in Miami is playing a kid to go to NIL and he goes to Miami, they're going to do it on a 1-year basis. And if the kid transfers away from Miami, he's not going to get the deal renewed. So it's kind of already happening, even though it's not, you can't do it longer than a year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I hear you. No, man, I hear you. And then Joey comes up and says, plenty of talent in the NFL that were now 4 and 5 stars. Well, that's for sure, Joey. I mean, you can just take a look at the Wolf Leagues of my 2 brothers. That will tell you that. There's obviously a lot of development. No one really knows what you're going to get. No one really knows the type of what's in the head. Sometimes what in the head doesn't go with the body. Sometimes it's high school. How's a young guy handle being away? So, yeah, Joe, you're absolutely right, but I'll continue on with this. And I'll just go with the last question then, Travis. What do you think when you sit there and put this, when Athlon Sports goes ahead, and I'm not saying Athlon Sports is a rule, I'm just saying I'm looking at all these people that are talking, and they put our roster with WVU in the bottom. I think they're 14th, but maybe they're 13th. I don't know, something like that. But towards the bottom, what does that tell you? What does that say? How do How do you rate it? I mean, when you look at us with the points and all that, how do we fare?
Well, I think until proven otherwise, I think that the national perception is not that far off base. I think we have some really good talent on this team, but it's concentrated in a few specific rooms, offensive line and running back being the first two that come to mind. We've got a lot of talent in those two places. Yeah. But if you look at how thin we are at cornerback and how inexperienced we are, and you talked about lack of senior leaders, we don't have a whole lot of seniors on the team. So I think it's right for the national perception and even our own fans to look at this team and look at the what has happened over the last few years with a roster that lost some of its best players and didn't replace them with obvious guys who are going to take the mantle. And question this team. And I hope that Neil Brown and the team are together in summer workouts and fall camp, and they're looking at this national perception and they get some of that toughness back that's been missing for the last several years.
You weren't prepared for this, but I just had it as the recruit that just signed. I can't remember his name, offensive lineman, saying that, they talked about the players and everything. They talked about the culture of WVU. And he was blown away by it, which is a really good deal. Love it that he's blown away by it. I'm saying is I'm just not sure what that culture is. I don't know. Do you? Did I miss something?
I mean, I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day that, Neil Brown certainly talks like he understands sort of the coal mining mentality, the blue collar mentality of the state of West Virginia and how that impacts and influences the product on the football field. And he talks a good game, but I just haven't seen it translate and manifest the way you would expect to in a football game yet.
That's a fair enough answer. I believe that to be fair. If you look at it, and you are not sitting there bashing, but it's 22-25. That's what it is.
Right.
You just can't beat it. I agree. All right, Travis. Anything else you want to put in there? I'll give you. Joey says he agrees with you. And the 1-year NIL deals, but it says if a local attorney pays a player $10,000 for 5 ads, and that player does the 5 ads, collects his money, and enters the portal, what good are those ads? Well, they're good for the player, Joey. I mean, the player made some money. I think I know a few of those, not just on WVU, that they go ahead and after they saw what they got for money-wise or thought that they'd get a little bit extra-wise, it's the Wild Wild West. You don't know what you're going to get, and you don't know everybody's situation, so we don't know. Anything else you want to add, Travis?
No, it's always a pleasure, Wolfman.
Well, what's your next article going to be?
Next article, I think I'm probably going to do a recruiting recap later in this week. I understand we may have a few more additions in the next couple of days, so I'm going to wait for those to come through and see if they come through. And then I'll start a position-by-position preview series.
I can't wait because, we'll want you to come back and talk about it because I like what you do, man, and appreciate all that you put in. You really put in a lot of time, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
All right. See you, brother. Take care. All righty. Well, that is Trvis Knobbe. Obi-Wan Kenobi for me. Takes me through a lot of stuff. And I think that's really a lot of good things right there. Let's get into here with this, okay? Because I said I would do this with Deion, and I want to do this with Deion. And I'm going to put my link out there. I know people think I'm crazy for doing this, but I am going to do it. I hit the wrong button. And let's see here. Okay. So we have here, let me get this up. This cracks me up. I love Deion Sanders, guys. He's a mover and a shaker, and he backs up. Hey, listen, if you talk the talk, but you walk the walk, and you're not offending and you're talking about God and all is good. But Pat Narduzzi, which a lot of people here probably would love to take a shot at him. I'm not going to. But that's not what the transfer portal is intended to be. It was not to overhaul your roster like Deion has done. Well, we'll see how that works out. But to me, it looks bad on college football coaches across the country. Pat Narduzzi. And Deion comes back with, I don't know who he is. If he walked in here right now, I wouldn't know him. I'll tell you this. I do. Listen, Pat Narduzzi comes from Michigan State. I think he's a very tough guy. Here, first, let me go ahead and put the link out there because I'm crazy enough to do so. And if anyone here wants to jump on, please feel free. I paste it out there. Go ahead. Jump on. I'll bring you on. Please be respectful. My mom watches this, so watch your language. But when I sit here and I think of Pat Narduzzi, I think of a tough defensive coordinator, came to Pitt. He's had some success. I hate, as much as I begrudge Pat Narduzzi having success, I understand that he knows the game. I think he complains a lot. I think he plays some games mentally with other people, which is fine. But then I go ahead and I look at with Deion Prime. Now, listen, if you want to go up against Deion Prime, it's like saying is you better know who you're getting in the ring with, because this guy's can talk the best shade and smack anyone that's been in the history of football. Okay, I haven't seen anyone who can't sit there and go, I've seen Deion talk and he's backed it up and he's walked the walk. So if you're going to get in the ring and say that, and Deion said that Narduzzi was upset about the receiver last year going to USC, tampering and all that, I understand that by Narduzzi, but there's no way to prove it until somebody steps up. So anybody want to come on? Tell me about it. It's your call. You make the call. Is Pat Narduzzi right from Pitt saying this is not about it to reload your team? But then again, who says what's right or wrong? You're there to win. Is it a morality bid? Like you're just raising this team? Or are you there because you're spending millions and making millions and receiving the colleges? So is it a morality bid? Is it Pat Narduzzi? I mean, would Pat, if he could change and bring in all these excellent players like Deion, if he had the pull, if he could walk the walk that Deion has walked in his life, do you think Pat would sit there and say, nah? I don't know. What's your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts? Anyone could go ahead, jump on. You see me have people come on. Anyone, go ahead, write in, chat. Give me something. I know people are out there. I know you're watching. If you have something, if you want to write something, I can go ahead and put it in tomorrow's show as well. Speaking of tomorrow's show, I've had such great, like Frank Fear and with Daryl Prue. He's basketball. I know he's basketball, guys, and I love basketball. I love WVU basketball. But I will tell you this. Daryl Prue coming on, all he does, if you go to his social media pages, his Twitter, his Facebook, all he talks about is coaching and the way you should be coached. And so tomorrow, I want to start something with we'll probably talk a little bit about the finals with the Nuggets going on, but we know that's going to be a foregone conclusion, I think, with the Nuggets. But I will say this, that Daryl Prue coming in and talking coaching is going to be really cool. Maybe make it a weekly thing. All these people are coming in. I have some surprises coming up this week. Really excited about the future. Nobody wants to jump in. You can come in right now. I'm telling you, all you guys, gals, want to sit there and text this or text that or write that, talk here, be positive here, talk smack, whatever. This is your opportunity. Come on. The WolfMan's call. Don't seem like anybody's biting into it. Go ahead. Come in tomorrow. Talk about it. Pat Narduzzi, Deion Sanders. I want to know, is this ruining college football more than anything else? Or is this just another facet of college football that we're here to deal with? Again, Deion comes in there and he says, I don't like this team. I can bring in better. And so he talked it, and now he's walked it. Well, I shouldn't say he's walked it, but he did take over a 1-11 team last year. A 1-11 team, and even if the talent isn't there, or maybe some talent was there, maybe the culture, maybe the I'm a winner, whatever it is, but that Deion walks around. One thing I love about Deion, that he says this, and some people I know are probably going to say, well, if you're crazy. Deion says, don't let my confidence offend you. I mean, all the things that he has done, all the things that he does, and he still gives the credit to God. So he's not up there acting like, he's doing this by himself. But if he can do it, and the rules that are out there right now say do it, why shouldn't he turn a 1-11 team around and reload his roster? Strip it and reload it if you can do that. Can Pat Narduzzi do that? Pat? I don't think so. And that's not an insult to Pat Narduzzi. I don't think anybody can. But I think Colorado, who's paying all the money, I think this is not about, hey, man, we're good guys. Everybody gets a trophy. Participation trophies. No, this is not participation trophy time. This is who's going to win. Now, Deion Sanders, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to bet against him. I have no idea how good that team is going to be. I do know that when he took over the team at Jackson State, they won. They won. And I think he's played at the highest level to the highest degree. I'm not going to bet against him. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Nobody wants to come on. I didn't even get a chance to do the film breakdown. I promise you, tomorrow with Daryl Prue coming on, we're going to go ahead and get it done, and we're going to break down the film of these recruits. I was actually breaking it down today, and it was a lot of fun because there's some talent there. We got some talent that the WVU's got going on. And let me see here. Let me look. And I got his name. It's now tell me if I'm wrong with it here. Obinna Onwuaku. Obinna Onwuaku. Okay, that's his name. I tell you, guy I think he's gonna be a bandit. I think he's 6'4", 225. I love his height. I want an edge guy that's 6'4" or higher like that can run like this guy. This is a bandit. This is what you see. This is a big-time guy, potentially. Okay, he hasn't played a game yet or down yet for the Mountaineers. You know how I feel about that if you follow me. But I will say this, is that I love what I see where he's at, and I love he's 225, and I love his skills. Don't forget about Aaron Beasley. Sign up for the National Football Foundation.org. Sign up to get Aaron Beasley in there, Jim Carlin, and, of course, the great one, Randy Moss. And even though he's Marshall, doesn't matter. We're West Virginia. And to get him in there, he's going to get in. There's no doubt in my mind. But I hope we're all in there trying to get him in. Aaron Beasley, one of the great guys I know. I love him. He's a brother. Jim Carlin, I actually had him come in with Coach Nealon and Coach Ignetti and Coach Bowden. We had this event, greatest event I ever did at WVU. Coach Carlin was older, but boy, he was funny. And we had a great time enjoying with him. And of course, I think that is it, folks. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We're going to have more guests. It's going to get better and better. Why? Because, like I said, the Wolfman's Call. Okay, it rocks. It doesn't just rock football, but it rocks football. And we're going to rock it. We're going to get Daryl Prue in here, and we're going to talk about sports and what's good, what's bad, and what we're doing. So, you know what? Had a great time today. Y'all have a good day. And here's a new one. Traylon Davis for Parmar Stores. Here is your commercial. Have a great day.
Hi, I'm Traylon Davis. I'm from Jackson, Ohio, and when I'm back home, you will find me at my local Parmar store.
We have that gold and blue pride at your local Parmar store. We are coming to your neighborhood soon. West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, we have you covered. Download the Parmar app and sign up for the Parmar Rewards Card. Food, gas, groceries, and more, we are gold and blue proud, and we are Parmar stores.
If there's not a Parmar store near you now, there will be soon.